Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of my podcast. I hope that you're all doing okay. Happy Wednesday. I hope you had a great week. Thank you so much to those of you that watched my last episode. I really appreciate the warm welcome back. It means a lot. As you can tell by the title, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the infamous compliment, you speak well, or you're so well spoken for a black girl. Whatever version the compliment comes in, we're going to be talking about it because I just feel like it's one of those compliments that people give, where it's always made me feel a bit weird. And I've never known why it makes me feel weird. And if you are a black woman that speaks anything similar to what I do, or your version of it from wherever you're from, it's maybe something that you've heard as well from people, and maybe it's also made you feel a little bit weird. So yeah, we're going to be chit-chatting in this episode about it. I think it's one of those compliments that people give and perhaps don't really understand how or why in any way it could be read as problematic, but I think it's definitely important to understand that in certain contexts it absolutely can, and it's one of those compliments that you have to be careful when you're giving, specifically to black women, because of the loaded history when it comes to black women's abilities, especially when it comes to speaking and expressing themselves and speaking with authority on topics. It kind of just rubs on the kind of boundaries of that issue. So the first time I remember this kind of being like an issue, like the way I talk or the way that I write or the way that I speak being something that is just an issue, is there, would probably be when I was 7 years old. So I was at school, and this was post summer holidays, so some 6 weeks had finished, come back to school, and you know when you're in primary school and you get that task every year where it's like, oh, tell me about your summer holidays in 3 paragraphs. And it's essentially a creative writing task for English, right? So we get back off from the holidays, I get set this homework, I go home and I do it. And I was so excited because I'd had a great summer that year. I remember that summer, it was very fun, did a lot of stuff. And also what I'd done that summer is, going to preface this by saying that I was, and still kind of am, but was a very, very, very big bookworm. I would read, like race through books. So during the summer holidays, I'd actually spent quite a lot of time reading the thesaurus from cover to cover. So I had learned all these new words, and this was just the perfect exercise to use them in. So I take the homework home, I do the work, I do my 3 paragraphs, and I've got all these, synonyms for words. And I was just gassed. Go back to school, hand in the homework, everything's fine. And then come back to school the following day, and the teacher is now handing back out everyone's papers with your grades and your feedback on there. And I'm looking at mine and it's looking very red. Bear in mind, when something is good in the piece of work, it's written in green pen with comments here and there. And if you're doing something incorrectly, it's red. I'm looking at the piece of paper and it's looking very red. I'm thinking, oh, okay, what's the problem? So I'm looking through now at my work and I'm realizing that she's basically circling every word that's like longer than 2 syllables. She's circled. And then she's got an arrow coming to the side with a question mark. And then the next word, circled, arrow, do you know what this means? Another word, circled, arrow, use this word instead. And it's the simpler synonym of that same word. And the whole way through, it's just that. And was so confused because it's not as if, like, don't get it wrong, this was not like any grammatical errors. It's not as if the work didn't read properly or the words were not used in the right context. All of that was fine. She just didn't seem to like the fact that I guess I was using those words. It was strange. Anyway, finished school that day, my mum came to pick me up and the teacher went to speak with my mum. And when we got back home, my mum told me that the teacher had asked her if I had written the work by myself or if I'd received some help from her or from someone else or had someone else written it for me. And obviously my mum was like, no, she's written it herself. Like, she's been working a lot on her English and her reading over the summer. So yeah. And I just remember asking my mum at the time, like, oh, that's so strange. Like, why would she think that I didn't write it? Like, who else would write it? And my mum at the time, I guess, didn't want to, you're not going to go into all of that with your kids. So she was like, oh, it was just really good. So she was just wondering if, it was all of yours, but it's not that deep. Don't worry about it. But I remember from that moment being so self-conscious about my writing, and it made me feel as if I was doing like too much. And it's so weird because that happened when I was 7 years old. I'm now obviously a lot older, and even now, like if I write a long form piece of content, I will go back through and sometimes still take out certain words and just swap them for a more common word that everyone would know, because it just takes me back to then. I just feel embarrassed like doing it. I'm being too pompous, or I think I'm too nice, like using certain words. So it's so weird that carried on for so long. It's like as I've gotten older and I reflect back on that moment, I just kind of think, had I been a young white middle class child and I'd written that piece of work, would that feedback have been the same? Would that teacher still have wanted to speak to my parent and ask if I'd written that? Or would it have been great vocabulary, here's like a gold star, to tell your parents what a great piece of work you've done? Would that have been the feedback? And I do think a part of it, and her part of the questioning of the teacher, was that she just didn't think that someone from my background would be able to write something like that and would know what those words mean. And yeah, it's just always something that stuck in my mind. And as an adult, like this is so random, but one person whose like speech and the way that they talk and the words they use I really like is Chris Eubanks Sr. I love listening to him talk. I think that his grasp of the English language, his vocabulary is just insanely beautiful. It really is. And I think that it's somewhat of a lost art. I think hearing people use a wide range of vocabulary, it's just not really something that a lot of people do. And especially in the age that we live now, where there's kind of this homogenization of language that happens, especially online, where, you know, you got kids from London using slang from, you know, people over in the fucking Bronx. It's like, what's going on right now? And with Chris Eubanks Sr. specifically, sometimes I think it's sad when people seem to like be laughing at him and the way that he talks and expresses himself, because I do think that feeds into another thing that people do with Black people, where everything you say is just inherently funny. And people just view you as entertainment, even when nothing, like the content of what you're saying, isn't meant to be funny at all. People just associate Black people with entertaining, and they think that he's putting on a persona rather than just admiring the fact that he has such, you know, a vivacious way of expressing himself via his words. So yeah, I've always found that quite interesting. And obviously that's an example from when I was really young, but it goes to show like how young that kind of thinking and those kind of ideas start, and the impact that they can have like years and years on at a much later age. I remember when I joined the world of work at corporate, and there was always this like weird trend and pattern that I noticed, where whenever I would give a presentation, there would be this flurry of, oh my God, that was amazing, you were so good, oh, the way that you express yourself is just, that was great. And I remember specifically, I used to be a part of the team that would go and pitch for new work, and we went to go pitch at this particular company. And when we finished the pitch, the client at the time, who we did end up winning, but the client reached out to my boss's boss, who was also pitching with me, to tell them specifically that they really, really loved the way that I had presented during the pitch, and that I was amazing, and I just, you know, explained things so well, and I was just so well spoken and this and that. And then my manager's manager told my line manager, and then it got back to me. And it was talk of the office for about a week. Everyone was coming to pat me on the shoulder. And at the time, I loved it. I just started my career, and that is the kind of praise that just goes a long way. So it wasn't something that I viewed negatively at the time at all. I was like, yeah. But as I got older and that kind of praise continued, again, it started to rub me the wrong way. Like naturally, I'm someone who just doesn't really take myself too seriously. I don't know if it comes across when I do these episodes or not, but in real life, I don't take myself too seriously at all. You've heard me in the podcast, I swear like quite a lot. Like I'm very like laid back in that way. I always wondered whether the surprise was because obviously if I'm giving a presentation or going to meet clients, I'm not going to sit there swearing, and I'm not going to sit there being, you know, unprofessional. I'm going to put my professional voice on and do my professional shtick, like what the fuck? And as I reflected on it, I thought maybe that's it. Like they didn't expect me to be able to do that, to switch into being more professional when it's needed. Or maybe they thought that I was going to bring, you know, my silly little banter and vibes to like a meeting with a potential client, and the fact that I don't is something that they feel they need to comment on or highlight, or wow, I'm so shocked she wasn't, you know, being a goof in the middle of this client meeting. Well, duh. You know, and I do think that that is also something that could be considered a form of a microaggression, is overpraising, where you praise someone so much for doing something that other people are also doing that it begins to feel like a microaggression, as if the bar was so low for me as a black woman to be able to give a good presentation, that when I do, you feel like you've got to go above and beyond to praise me for it because it's so rare, or you've not seen that before. And it's a bit like, again, just that rubbing up the wrong way. It's like, why would you think that I wouldn't be able to deliver a presentation in a professional manner like everybody does? I feel like I do have a good sense of my abilities. So this isn't a case of, oh no, girl, like don't dull yourself down, I'm sure you did do that great. No, I know when I've done something exceptional and when I've done what other people are doing. Do you know what I mean? And I never felt sometimes in those moments that what I did warranted that level of praise. And yeah, as I said, when I look back, some of it feels a little bit just kind of performative, or like really showing the shock at thinking that someone like me couldn't talk in that way. Now, even here on YouTube, if you go to my first episode talking about the corporate world, there are a couple of comments mentioning that I'm well spoken and I articulate myself well. And I just try to be graceful sometimes and just, thank you, and keep it moving. But at the same time, there's also that element of, why wouldn't I be? It's almost like, what, you clicked on the video and thought because of the way that I look, I wasn't going to talk the way that I do, or be able to speak about the things that I'm speaking of in the way that I am. It's just like, what are you trying to say? Like, I don't like the kind of subtext of the compliment, because it implies, like I keep saying, this element of surprise or shock, or oh, I wasn't expecting that from you. It's giving that. And I've even had it happen in interview situations where, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, where there's almost like a disappointment that the interviewer will have when they realize that you are actually competent and you can actually speak well about your work. You can actually answer their questions with ease and with eloquence. Some of these corporate spaces enjoy having young black women in the space so that they can kind of make their team a bit more cool, or give it a bit more edge, or whatever it is. And they believe that if they hire a black woman, they're going to be able to bully her about, or that she's going to be so grateful to be brought into this fold that they're going to be able to treat her like some sort of pet, or that they're going to be able to be her mentor and guide her and whatnot. So again, when you come into those interviews and you show a certain level of competence, you understand the questions you're being asked, you understand what they want to hear from you, and you're delivering that, there's a disappointment. And I've seen it, like, literally on their face. It's a bit like, oh, like, she can't answer my questions, and it will get to a point in the interview where it almost feels like they're trying to catch you out. It's like, is this an interview or are we playing a game? Like, we'll be going through the skills and then they'll try and be like, oh yeah, so what about, and then they'll pick this really niche skill. It's like, oh yeah, I do actually have experience doing that. No. And it's like, okay, yeah. And it's like, okay. And I think the reason that I find the compliment so strange is because I know so many black girls that speak exactly like I do, if not more well spoken. The majority of my friends do. Acquaintances I know also speak like me. So it's not something that I see as rare at all. And I often wonder, when that compliment is given to black women, you just know, and you can see when you go through other people's comment sections, or you watch content by creators who look a particular way, who aren't black, you will never go through and see a comment saying, oh my gosh, you're so well spoken, because there is this inherent understanding that, oh, well, of course that person's going to be well spoken, they're white. What else would they speak like? It's almost like that. So then when it's pointed out in regards to a black woman, it feels like, oh, I'm going to point this out because this is different and this is rare, and I don't expect black women to speak like you. And whenever someone says it to me who's not black, I think the first thing it tells me about that person is that they just don't spend any time around black women. That's the first thing it says, because if they did, then they'd see that the way that I speak or express myself or articulate ideas is not particularly like new or rare at all. So yeah, it says a lot about the person because of your understanding and biases around black women and black people in general. You probably think that, oh, all black women are uneducated. And the author and feminist Patricia Collins, in her book, I'll get the name of the book up because I read it ages and ages ago, but she speaks a lot about this in her book. It came out like in the 90s, so slightly dated, but it's still like very relevant. But she speaks a lot on how media depictions of black women influence how black women in real life are treated. It's a really, really great book. It is kind of specifically she's African American, so it focuses on African American women, but obviously I think there are a lot of learnings and teachings in general that can apply to any black woman living in a Western society. So yeah, it's a really great book, and she just explores all of that. And I do think that that is the problem, because if you have a bunch of people that don't regularly attempt to integrate themselves or speak or understand black women, the only places really then that they are getting a touch point with a black woman is via the media, TV, film, music, entertainment. And we all know that there are quite rigid stereotypes that exist about black women in those spaces, and they're not always the most positive. In the book, she does go through all of the different like kind of categories, but as I said, it was written in the 90s. Since then, there has been like more. I'd say in modern day, and especially also included in that is social media, it's this kind of like ghetto, hood, girl from ends, your ghetto fabulous type persona of a black woman who is loud, bodacious, confident, perhaps hypersexual. And just to clarify, there is nothing wrong with any of the women who do embody those stereotypes. I think that while things can be a stereotype, they can also just be inherent parts of who a black woman is or can be. And there's nothing wrong with that. Do you know what I mean? I absolutely love some of the hood girls that are popular. Why not? Do you know what I mean? I'm also from literally ends in London. So again, with when people stereotype like that, they assume that, oh, well, all girls that come from the hood must talk like this and act like that. It's like, I don't. There is variety there. And even on social media, when you look at the content of black women that does well, or the personalities behind black women who do well, they often do have very, very, very extroverted personalities. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when it feels like that is the only representation of black women that's ever allowed to kind of grow or take up space, it causes problems in the real world. Because if you then present as a black woman who isn't like that, people, they don't know what to do with you. And then often that not knowing what to do with you can turn into insulting you, because they don't know how to interact with you. And I've definitely been in spaces where I can feel that I am interacting with someone who doesn't regularly interact with real life black women, because they just come and they just project their ideals of what black women are like onto me, and whether it's true or not, they don't care. It's just what they've seen of black women, so I must respond to that. I was in the pub in the summer at this really lovely beer garden that me and my fiance go to quite a lot, and we were sitting there chilling, and there was this massive group of white girls that were, it looked like a reunion of some sort. So, they were drinking, and a few of them just kept staring at me. And if there's one thing about me, I don't like being stared at. I understand that sometimes it can be like a flattery thing, or they might think you look nice or whatever, but I really, really just don't like being stared at. And they were doing it for ages and ages and ages. And eventually they got drunk enough where they just kind of came over to start talking. And one of the first things one of them said to me, "Hey girl, oh my gosh, like you look so nice, girl, yes." Pardon? Like, huh? That's the king. What the heck? Like, I don't know you from anywhere. And it's strange that that is the way that you feel is appropriate to say hello to me. You can just say hello. And that has happened quite a few times where they just feel like, because they see a lot of black women. And also to note, I'm in London, I'm in the UK, you're referencing speech used by black African American women halfway across the world, and using that as a way to interact with me, someone from London. Like, make it make sense. There's that kind of behavior that goes on where it's like, oh my gosh, it's a black girl, how do I say hi to her? Hi girl! Like, they just don't even think twice about what they're saying or how that's going to come across. I've been in other spaces. I remember being at work where someone, the table was talking about Top Boy, and someone turned around to me to like involve me in the conversation. They said something along the lines, "Oh yeah, you've definitely seen Top Boy." I thought, pardon? I have, but what do you mean I've definitely seen Top Boy? Bear in mind, I was the only black person, obviously, sitting on this table. And again, it was just like, why do you assume that because I'm black, I'm gonna like something like Top Boy? I do, but that's not the point. Had you asked another black girl, she might not have known what Top Boy was or had any sort of interest in a show like that. Regardless, I do think it's strange in general that people do think that there is a particular way that they need to talk to black women. And I think that's where this, "oh, you're so well spoken" comes from, because they just can't give a normal compliment. As I spoke about before with my like presentations at work and my professionalism and oh my god, you speak so well when it comes to, you know, explaining your ideas and things. Instead of talking about the actual ideas or the content of what I was coming out of my mouth, because that would have been something to compliment, or I really liked that idea that you had on that, or oh yeah, what you were saying about that was really interesting. It's always how I'm saying it. And I think that is quite key in understanding the difference between a compliment and something that is a microaggression. And as I said with representation, I do think that, you know, nothing in the media or other spaces happens by accident. I do think that there is like quite a specific effort to portray all Black women as being a certain way. I don't know what it is. I think that a lot of people and spaces and industries do see Black women as a genuine threat, and in order to contain that threat, what better way to do that than to put out consistently, as I said, they're not even negative images of Black women, but just very specific images of Black women that definitely do imply specific things about Black women. And as I spoke about at the start of the episode, it's a real kind of double-edged sword with the compliment and how to take it, because there is nothing ever wrong with being told that you speak well and that you articulate your ideas well. And those are skills that you have to learn at the end of the day. No one inherently is born being able to do that. And there are a lot of people who do still struggle to express themselves, especially verbally, when it comes to their ideas. So it's not something that, oh, everyone can do that. It is definitely something that you have to kind of work on and practice. And, you know, who doesn't want to be complimented on something that they have spent time refining? But equally within that, I think it's the othering that sort of compliment brings that doesn't feel very nice, because you know that compliment isn't being given to people who look different to you. You know that a white middle class person is not being told that they are articulate or well spoken, because there is that understanding that of course they would be. Or, you know, then it frames something that is actually a skill to develop, because not every white person speaks well or can articulate themselves. But by specifically only complimenting people who aren't that, you are then implying that, oh, to be well spoken and articulate is just an inherent white trait, and it's absolutely not. It's something that you have to work on. So again, that I think is where that tension comes through, where yes, it's a compliment, but on the flip side, I don't like the othering that comes with that sort of compliment as well, or the highlighting. I also think it kind of plays on the tension as a Black woman of being authentic and just being yourself, and constantly being seen through other people's preconceived ideas about Black women. And what I mean by that is, for me, I'm just sitting here and I'm talking how I always talk and expressing myself how I always express myself, and I don't think anything of it, because that's just intrinsic to who I am. So when someone then comes along and points out, oh wow, you're so eloquent and well spoken and this and that, you are then forcing me to decipher what you mean by your comment. Now I've got to start thinking about all of these ways that I am affirming or not affirming certain stereotypes that exist about Black women. And it's just that constant thing of being a Black woman in the world where you are just constantly thinking about yourself, and not because you want to be thinking about yourself, but because other people force you to. I don't think people appreciate that emotional or psychological toll that can take on Black women, because no other group really has to do that. You're allowed to just exist, you're allowed to be. And I know at this point someone's going to say, okay, so what is the right way to compliment a Black woman in that context? Because I hate when people do this. You know, when you say that you don't like something or that something isn't right, and instead of trying to hear what you're saying, they kind of start this, oh, well, I'm just not going to compliment Black women anymore, because every time I try and compliment a Black woman, I just say the wrong thing, so I'm just going to keep it to myself. It's not a case of doing that. It's not a case of doing that. It's just about understanding. And like I said before, instead of saying that, oh, you're so well spoken, you're so articulate, say something about the content that came out of the person's mouth. In the UK, someone well spoken tends to be someone who speaks consistently with how middle class people tend to speak. So when you're telling someone they're well spoken, you're saying, oh, I'm acknowledging your proximity to white middle class culture. And therein lies the problem, where there are so many people who have so many great things to say, but the only thing that's stopping them being heard, the only thing that stops them being platformed in the same way that other people are, is that they're not well spoken. So it's not about the content of what they're saying, it's how they're saying it, what accent they use to say it. Even people who are from the north of England will find in certain rooms their words don't hold as much weight, because in some people's eyes they're not well spoken because they've got a northern accent. even if that person isn't even working class, they could be middle class, but they've got a northern accent. So to someone from the south, they will be seen as someone who they're not as well spoken as someone who has got a southern standards type accent, similar to what I have. So when you're then looking at it again through black women, there are so many black women who are consistently dismissed or seen as stupid or unintelligent or uneducated because they don't have an accent like mine. So by telling me again, oh, you're so well spoken, you're so this, it just gives into that, oh my God, you're such a good black person. Oh, look at you speaking so well. Oh, look at you. You express yourself so well that, oh, that's the right way to be black. These are the type of black women I want to see. It's not giving what you think it's giving. It's actually quite rude in terms of how I kind of handle this compliment now, or this comment in general. I think for the most part, listen, the older I get, I'm trying to keep my peace. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to war with everyone. So I tend to just say thank you. But I think a better response, though, in hindsight, if you're trying to ascertain someone's motives behind the compliment, is just ask them, well, why wouldn't I be? If someone says, oh, you're so well spoken, you're so wow, you articulate yourself so well, just be like, oh yeah, why wouldn't I? And then that gives someone the opportunity. If it is a genuine compliment that they meant, then they can explain that and they won't have a problem explaining that. If they start to get flustered or, oh no, I didn't mean, oh, I was just saying, then you know that that is a microaggression. They are trying to imply that, oh, black women don't really speak well. Look at you, you special little star, you can talk. Like, that's basically what they're saying. And yeah, if you are someone listening to this and you are non-black and you've said that to a black person before, or you've thought that, definitely rethink why you feel that that is a compliment that you need to give, and B, how you can rephrase that to make the person feel seen in the same way and complimented without making them also feel weird at the same time. And if you are a black woman and someone says it to you, you don't have to accept it, and feel free to challenge them on it as well, because that's the only way that some people can learn, is when they're challenged on these things that they say. Yeah, I feel like that's all of the points that I've got today. As I said, I feel like this is just something that's been said to me so many times, and I feel like I finally understood like what it is about that specific compliment or praise that I just find so uncomfortable. So I just really wanted to share my thoughts on it. Bit of a ranty episode, to be honest. But yeah, if you're also a black woman, let me know what you think on this topic. If someone said it to you before, how it makes you feel, because this could very much just be like a me problem, and perhaps there's some people out there who do actually enjoy the compliment and like it. I'd love to hear about that and how you've dealt with it, what you think about it and how it makes you feel. But yeah, I'm gonna end the episodes here. I will see you back with another topic, and I hope you all have great weeks. Bye guys.